Do you find learning English and speaking English frustrating because you're always translating in your head before you speak? Yeah, that's a very common thing. Well, in today's episode of the More Than English podcast, I'm going to give you one simple trick. Well, actually, it's a two-part trick to train your brain to think directly in English. Because it's not just English, it's more than English. Let's go. Hey there, English speakers. Jesse here from Sweed Academy, helping you to get to that next level in English and in life. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here for another More Than English podcast. And I'm going to try to help your next 15, 20 minutes or so to go by swimmingly. How is that? And we're going to learn some new expressions. We're going to learn some new vocabulary. And I'm going to show you one simple trick, one simple little idea that will help you think directly into English, or we'll call it your target language, because maybe you're trying to learn something other than English too. But how do you go from having your idea in your head and thinking in English directly instead of translating it from your native language into English, which, let's face it, that's what we do normally, isn't it? Is that what you do? I bet it is, isn't it? Because it's natural, right? Because we think normally in our native language. That's what we do. When we see a red ball, we think normally that's a red ball. And then, well, in your language, I'm speaking in English because, well, English is my language. So I would see a red ball and I'd think automatically, red ball, right? But how can we train our brains to think when we're switched into the second language form, right? In the second language mode, how can we train our brains to directly think in that language, right? So that's what we're going to work on. And I'm going to show you some methods to work on. Actually, one basic method that you can try and see if that helps you. How does that sound? If it helps you, or if it doesn't, if you have any of your suggestions or ideas, please feel free to share them with me, because if it works, I'd love to know. And if this doesn't work, I'd also love to know, because, I don't want to spread fake news, right? So let me know at facebook.com/Sweed Academy English or facebook.com/Sweed Academy Jesse. You could also search for me. Just type in Jesse Teacher. That'll take you there. And of course, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Sweed Academy, you can comment in the comment box below. Tell me if you do this already, or if you're going to try this, or if you have tried it and it doesn't work, right? I'd like to know both results, because we're searching for results here, right? We're not searching for what makes me feel good. Don't tickle my ears. Don't just tell me something just to make me feel good. Don't tell me, oh, that's a great idea. I love it, if you haven't tried it yet. So first try it and then let me know how it goes. Okay, good or bad. So what is this trick? Well, it's actually, I kind of lied. It's not one trick, it's kind of in two parts, right? Because are you like me, and when you're by yourself, you kind of talk to yourself? You have conversations in your own mind, and maybe sometimes you move your mouth when you're by yourself. Maybe you're washing dishes, or maybe you're walking the dog, or Maybe it's right before you go to sleep or right after you wake up and you're lying there in bed and you're thinking about conversations in your head and you're having conversations in your head, but in your mind you're having it with somebody else. Maybe you're also playing both parts. Do you do that? I don't either. No, just kidding. I do. And as you know, I live here in Spain, so I have Spanish friends and I have a Spanish wife. And so I have Spanish people that I imagine conversations with. So when I was walking my dog, I used to have a dog. Sadly, she died about 1.5 years ago. Almost 2 years ago now. But I was walking her and I'd imagine conversations with my Spanish friends. I was imagining having conversations with my wife. I was imagining having conversations with the person at the grocery store or at the restaurant ordering food. And I was imagining different conversations. And as I was imagining this, if I was imagining a conversation with a Spanish person, I would have that conversation in my mind by myself in Spanish, because obviously that's who I'm talking to. I'm not going to give them an English voice if we don't talk in English, right? So I was imagining these conversations in Spanish, and I would get so deep into the conversation in my own mind as I'm walking the dog that I would find myself stopping in the middle of the street. Well, not the street, but the sidewalk, the walking path. I would stop myself and stop the dog, obviously. And when I couldn't think of a word, when I got stuck on a word, and I would take my phone out of my pocket and look up that word in Spanish just so I could continue this imaginary conversation in my head. Right? So I was treating this conversation as if it were really happening. I would have the conversation in my head in Spanish so deep that I would pull the phone, the translator out of my pocket and look for a word that I was stuck on. So try that. Imagine yourself having a conversation with an English-speaking person, right? If you're not in an English-speaking country, if you don't know any English-speaking people, imagine you're having a conversation with me. Imagine you're talking with me when you're doing your dishes, when you're walking your dog, or when you're walking down the street, when you're shopping by yourself, and you're having an imaginary conversation. Have it with me. And imagine what I would say. Imagine how I would respond, right? You'll be surprised at how well this works. You'll be surprised about how automatically you're going to be thinking in English and fast. And when you get stuck on a word or when you get stuck on a grammar, pull out your notebook, write it down, write down that question, go home, research it, research that grammar, and use it the next time you have that imaginary conversation. That's part one. Part two is the topic of conversation, right? What to talk about. Now, here's my biggest suggestion when you're thinking about what to talk about in English. Try to think about and talk about topics of conversation that is different than what you would talk about in your language. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine you are a big football fan or soccer fan, whichever way you want to call it. Imagine you're a big, and I'll call it football because I'm in Europe, and let's face it, it should be called football, shouldn't it? Right? So you're a big football fan, and you talk with your friends. Sorry, that was my phone going off. I forgot to put it in silent mode. Shame on me. But where was I? Right. Imagine you're a football fan. You're probably used to talking with your friends about football in your language. You're probably used to reading about football in your language. You're probably used to watching football matches in your language. Everything about football is already in your language, right? The vocabulary, the terminology, the players, the everything. At first, when you're starting to train your brain to think directly in English or directly in your target language, think about something different. Come up with new topics to talk about. Don't talk about football. Don't talk about fashion. Don't talk about what you're used to talking about, right? Talk about something new. Think about new current events. Think about how you would talk about religion or philosophy of different subjects. Think about how you would talk about current events in an English-speaking country. English-speaking politics, American politics, British politics, Australian politics, right? Then you're reading these news articles in English and imagine those conversations that you're going to have with me, right? Imagine you're having those conversations with me, talking about, if you're not used to talking about fashion, let's talk about fashion. Or let's talk about a different sport. Or let's talk about philosophy. Or let's talk about a new TV series or a new movie you just saw that you haven't talked about yet in your language, right? Talk about that with me. And of course, you could learn something new, like learn about something new, a new topic or a new area of that you've wanted to grow in, maybe health and fitness. I'm open to talk about any topic. So anything new that you want to talk about, when you're by yourself and you want a person to talk with, talk to me in your mind. Imagine I'm talking to you and do it in English. And let's talk about a new topic than you're used to talking about. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? So if you would like to really talk with me and have a conversation, you're always welcome to sign up for a class at Sweed Academy. You should check out the new website, sweedacademy.com. It is fantastic. I am excited about this. Go check that out, and you can sign up for a one-on-one class with me, and we can really talk about any of these topics. And not only that, if you're an English Black Belt member, you get a discount on these classes. How about that? A win-win. And you'll get access to all the courses that are on sweetacademy.teachable.com. And I have courses on vocabulary, idioms, phrasal verbs, listening, exam speaking. Go check those out. And I'll see you in the virtual classroom. But these are my tips on how to train your brain. You see, it's training. It's like any other muscle that's in your body. You can't just step up and pick up 100-pound weight if you've never lifted weights before, right? You have to work up to it. You have to do the proper exercises and proper training and guided practice along the way. That's what I'm doing for you, right? It's just your brain is like any other muscle. To do a specific skill, it needs time and practice, right? I like to say time and times. Time and times. Time to do it, you need sufficient time. Just 1 week, just 1 month, that might not be enough. Continual practice, and times meaning repetition, right? Times, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. Repetition, repetition, repetition until it becomes automatic, right? It's not an overnight thing. We're in a sprint, not a marathon. The other way around. We're in a marathon, not a sprint, right? We don't need to see successes tomorrow. We need to see small improvements today, each day. A small improvement, each day, a small improvement, little by little by little, until you look back and then you'd be able to see how far you've really come. And my black belt program is perfect for that because I give belt rankings, so you know exactly what you have to do to reach that next level. And that's what I'm here to help you with. So that's my suggestion for thinking directly in English. Now, let's go to a review. If you had problems, if you didn't understand or know some of the vocabulary or some of the expressions that I used in this episode, I'm going to review those right now. Okay, we're back, and I'd like to go over some of the key expressions and some different expressions and maybe some new vocabulary or expressions that you didn't know before that you can learn and, more importantly, use the next time that you speak English, right? Or think in English, or do these tricks to speak in English even to yourself, right? Apply the things in the podcast to learning the vocabulary and expressions and apply that to actually using it, right? That's the point, isn't it? Okay, so look with me at sweedacademy.com/podcast or in the podcast course. Look at the worksheet, and you can print it out. You can download it and print it out and study it and use it. But let's start. The first expression, I said to go swimmingly. I'm going to try to have your next 20 minutes go by swimmingly. And swimmingly, this is just a fun expression. It's not really that common. You've probably never heard it, but maybe you will now, right? When you learn a new word, a lot of times it'll just pop up in random places. So it just means to pass your time really well, right? To enjoy your time. If it goes swimmingly, it means it goes smoothly and you have a good time or it's successful, whatever you're talking about. To go swimmingly. Swimmingly. Next, I mentioned your target language. Now, probably your target language is English, especially if you're listening to this. But in a broader sense, your target language is whatever language you're learning, right? Imagine you're also learning Spanish, or you're learning Korean, or you're learning Chinese, or you're learning Arabic, or whatever. That language that you're learning is your target language, right? A target is something that you're aiming for, right? A goal, an objective. So this is your target language. Next, I've said this one before, and I think I said it on last week's podcast. Let's face it. Let's face it. And kind of use that intonation normally. Let's face it. And this is a good fluency builder. This is a way to sound more natural and more fluent in your English, right? And it just means the same as, let's be honest. Right? When you're going to say something that might be a little harsh to hear for some people, but it's honest and it's true. Let's face it. That's what we normally do, isn't it? That's what I said in the podcast, right? So let's face it. Use this to sound more fluent. Next, to be in blah, blah, blah mode. To be in a certain mode. That means to be mentally focused on this thing, right? If you're in parenting mode, you're in teaching mode, you're in learning mode, you're in relax mode, you're in working mode, right? It's the mental state that you're in at the moment, right? Mode as in the phone or in your computer, right? Silent mode, which I talk about later. Or if your computer's in sleep mode. Use that to talk about yourself. Next, to tickle somebody's ears is to just tell them something that you think they want to hear. Whether it's true or not, you just tell them good news, right? That's tickling somebody's ears. To tickle is when you take somebody and maybe squeeze them, or with your fingers grab them to make them laugh, usually under your armpits or at the bottoms of your feet, to make them laugh. We do it to babies and children a lot to make them laugh, right? Tickle, 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 right? So to tickle your ears, it's that same kind of idea. You're saying something to just please the ear, whether it's true or not. And like I said, I don't like that. So when I ask for feedback, don't just tickle my ears. I want to know your real opinion, whether you like something or you don't. Next, I said almost 2 years ago now. Almost 2 years ago now. And this is a natural way to explain that something happened a certain time ago, but you kind of express that it's kind of surprising that it's been so long, right? It feels like less time. It's surprising. She died almost 2 years ago now, right? By this time. I graduated high school 20 years ago now. I can't believe it. 1998. Wow. I graduated high school 20 years ago now. Right? It's a long time, but it doesn't feel that long. Right? So you can add now at the end. Next, a grocery store. That's an American way to basically say a supermarket, a place where you buy food. Right? The grocery store. The grocery store. Next, a vocabulary word, by myself. It just means to do something alone. I can do that by myself. She did that by herself. He did that by himself. Do you study English by yourself? Or do you have help from somebody? By yourself. By myself. Next, I would find myself doing something. When you find yourself doing something, it's a more advanced expression for saying you suddenly realize you're doing something. If you suddenly realize it, you find yourself doing it, right? I would find myself stopping in the middle of the street to look up a word in the dictionary, right? I would just automatically do it and then realize what I was doing, right? This expression is more advanced, probably for a purple belt level maybe, all right? To really know and understand and use. If you can't get the concept yet, don't worry about it. The more you learn, the more advanced you'll become, right? Next, you'll be surprised at. This is an expression to just say something surprising, right? And it's normally to give a suggestion. So you'd be surprised at how well this works. You'll be surprised at how quickly you'll finish. You'll be surprised at how much you'll learn in this course, right? When you're giving a suggestion, you can use this to show that the results will be more than they expect or faster than they expect. And next, again with mode, put your phone in silent mode, which I didn't do during the show. Next, shame on me. When I did something I should be embarrassed about, shame on me. I didn't put my phone in silent mode. Shame on me. And it's kind of like a light-hearted way usually to say this. So it's not super serious. And next, you can say, where was I? Where was I? Yeah. And then continue what you were saying. So if what you were saying gets interrupted by yourself or by something else, and you want to continue, come back to it and continue, where was I? Yes. And then continue. Where was I? So there we have it. Those are the expressions from this week's episode, from this week's show. These are expressions that you heard in the podcast in context. If you have to, go back and listen for some of these expressions again, or listen for them next time you listen to anything in English, right? They're pretty common, so most of them you'll hear when watching TV, listening to other podcasts, what have you. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me in another podcast, another episode, and another opportunity to learn. Again, if you want lessons, visit sweedacademy.com and sign up for a lesson. And I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to meet you. And I'd love to help you with whatever you need. I get super excited about helping people reach their goals. I just recently had been working with a student. He was preparing for an interview to get a job in Ireland. He is Brazilian. He was preparing for a job interview to fly to Ireland, have a job interview. We worked together, and he notified me the other day that he got the job. That's fantastic. That excites me. That makes me excited. That gives me energy, and that's why I do this. So congratulations to Wellington. Congratulations to you. And well, you did all the work. I just kind of was along for the ride. So, well done. I'm proud of you. Thank you. I will see you next week. Or if you subscribe to Sweed Academy on YouTube, I'll see you in my next video. Thank you. Do something nice for somebody today before they do it for you. Pay it forward. Be good or be good at it. I'll see you next time. Peace.